Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting, and publisher at Autonomy Global. It is April, folks. We are in quarter 2. This is a month we've dedicated to UTM and infrastructure, sponsored by Airspace Link. And we've got a really, really amazing group on today to talk about a UAS center that you might not know a lot about, but you will certainly by the end of this show. So we're going to talk with Dave Krause and Kimberly Benson, the administrator at the UAS Center at the San Bernardino Airport. Is this Norton test range they've got going on out there and all the ecosystem around it. So super excited to have you both on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dawn.
And for those that Dave has been a great friend of the show. He's been on before in his capacity at Influential Drones, where he leads that company and their training and sales efforts. So, Dave, it's great to have you back on the show in this interesting capacity as with the test range. So let's start with some introductions before we jump into all the things you guys are doing together. And Kimberly, I'm going to start with you. For those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about your personal background.
Hi, thanks, Dawn, for having us. My name is Kim Benson. I serve as the administrator for the UAS Center at SBD. And my background is actually in international trade and global business development. And I first started associating with the airport, doing business development in the Middle East for the private jet terminal that we have on site here.
Oh, super cool. When you say private jet, I think of the National Business Aviation Association. I go to that conference, their business aviation conference and expo. I've gone to that a couple times. It's quite a community you've got there. And I love how you've taken this airport and added this whole UAS piece to it. So we're going to talk more about that. But before we do, Dave, for those that don't know you, tell them about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Krause. I co-own a company called Influential Drones. We're located on the East Coast. Been in business for about 9 years now. Primarily support public safety, but do work with the general public in reference to training, equipment sales, and all different levels of programming consulting to stand out proper autonomy programs.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much. And Kim, I'm going to go back to you. That interesting background that you have in terms of international partnerships and working with business aviation, how did that lend itself to your working now with this UAS test center at SBD?
Well, I think that the concept of having a UAS center here at the airport was something that was under consideration by the SBD team for several years. And I think the time it just worked out timing wise that we were able to start the center right in the middle of COVID, actually, which was a good time to start something so innovative and new. So.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I was actually just reflecting the other day. We're 6 years post-COVID, right? And it really changed the world. I think and I started my company at really the same time. And it was a really weird time for entrepreneurs or like new projects to start. So I love that you were able to do it and really get it off the ground and take it as far as you have. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that. So it was in the summer of 2020, if I recall correctly. So can you explain, Kim, a little bit about kind of what the center is, like I'll do an air quotes, owns it, basically what the relationships are out there, just so people have a basic kind of background and understanding.
Sure, Don, and thanks again for having us. The UAS Center at SBD was started in July 2020, like I said, right in the middle of COVID. And we are structured as an enterprise fund. We're part of the Inland Valley Development Agency, which is a regional economic development agency in San Bernardino, California. We're located about an hour east of downtown LA. And we're on site at the airport, at San Bernardino International Airport, otherwise known as SBD. The UAS Center is focused on 3 main objectives. First, advancing drone technology, creating a safer community and then developing the workforce in the region. So I'll talk a little bit more about those objectives in a minute, but first I'd like to mention that San Bernardino International Airport used to be Norton Air Force Base, which was a critical logistics hub for the nation during World War II. Norton Air Force Base was closed in the mid-90s, and at that point, about 10,000 jobs were lost in our region. And then in response, the Inland Valley Development Agency was created to oversee the reuse of the former Air Force Base, and then to focus on economic development, business retention, and really continuing the region's legacy as a logistics hub. So it's been a tremendous success story with more than 18,000 jobs coming back to the region since the IVDA was formed. And San Bernardino Airport now is one of the fastest growing airports for air cargo in the nation. So when we think about the growing importance of all the different types of drone and other autonomous technologies, especially as those relate to the nation's supply chains and revolutionizing air mobility, it only makes sense that the UAS Center is here in San Bernardino.
Wow, what a rich history. And correct me if I'm wrong, either one of you, being a retired Air Force colonel, that Norton Air Force Base is something, it's a name I've heard. And I feel like at one point, and I don't know if it still is, there's either a reserve or a guard or both units there. I don't know if they're still active, at the the test range or at the base there. But the story you tell, Kim, is one that I think many other locations have a similar story in terms of, the base realignment and closure, or the BRAC, where something starts shutting down. And we all know now that you guys are both there, for those that have never been on a military base, it's basically a city. It's a mini city. And what's really cool about those locations is, generally speaking, there's a very rich environment around the base that kind of grows out of the population, the things that the base needs, whether it's hotels or restaurants and things like that. So we can explore that a little bit later. But before we do, I want to really focus on these three objectives that you outlined. And can you help, either you or Dave, I don't know who the right person is to kind of answer this question, but why was SBD just the natural place for those objectives to really work?
Well, let's see. SBD already was, as I mentioned, a very fast-growing airport for air cargo. So that in and of itself, lent SBD to being a hub for all different kinds of employment, number one. And then secondly, the fact that we've got airport operations, we've got entities that will adopt this kind of autonomous and other types of drone technology as just a natural outgrowth of what they're doing. So the adoption of technology in the region, it's just a natural place for that to happen.
Well, I love the foresight that you guys had, because I think the business aviation community, this is as an outsider, my perspective, was very hesitant to embrace the drone and even the air taxi or eVTOL community, right? So you see this, the crawl, walk, run. I think they're still kind of crawling, because it's almost like oil and water, right? Never the twain shall meet, like general aviation and drones in the same space, or in the same, especially on an airport or an airstrip. But I feel like there's been an awakening of all the different value that drones and autonomous systems can bring to airport operations, besides additional cargo delivery, whether it's inspection of the actual flight line and FOD, the foreign object, that can get sucked into engines and things like this. So Dave, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And I also, of course, before you even tell me that, tell us, how did you at Influential Drones on the East Coast get involved in helping with this endeavor out there on the left coast?
Thank you for asking that, Dawn. We've been involved almost since the beginning We already had a national footprint, so we're aware of activities that were happening in different areas of the country. And I was in a meeting in Palm Coast, came over and met the team here, and really wanted to engage quite early. And the reason, quite simply, is from conversations we've had in the past. The industry is evolving, but we're still holding things too close to the chest.
Mm.
And we can go and talk about oil and vinegar all day long, but someone needs to put it and mix it together.
Yeah.
And we can
By the
talk
way,
about it.
my favorite salad dressing, of course.
Exactly. And it's like we can either talk about it or we can do it.
Yeah.
And this was an opportunity for influential drones to essentially be influential with a partner that would trust us and not only allow us to work with them and and lead, but be behind them and show support. So
Yeah.
it was a natural, organic fit, and it's a privilege to come out here, and because we're really able to demonstrate how technology is possible. And I'll bring a real quick example.
Yeah.
You mentioned the NBAA, the National Business Aviation Association. And we've tried different avenues of calling all mentors, getting the manned aviation community to work with the unmanned. Well, here now we have an opportunity to literally pick up the phone and say, hey, airport ops, hey, tower manager, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. And be so um, deliberate in how we're going to conduct operations that we establish trust just by acting and performing. So there's we're not talking about it anymore. We're doing.
I love
And and that's what makes the big difference here at San Bernardino.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of differences, on the positive side. We're going to get into all of them, but what I want to do next, before we get into the actual ops of some examples, Dave, let's pop up the map if we could, because I would love for you guys to explain, when we say kind of it's a test range, air quotes, that's somewhat of a term of art, right? So what exactly are we talking about? And on this map, what are we looking at?
So what you're looking at is a test range that falls under the umbrella of the University of Alaska UAS test site. It is a 10-mile corridor or 10-mile range from point to point, beginning at a location on airport property and extending to an area that creates an austere environment. We have a lot of land access. So a lot of us in the drone community know that one of the hardest thing to do is to find an appropriate launch location. We've solidified all that with thousands of acres, not just, a spot here on the sidewalk. We've also identified areas that can be flown for under 55 pounds as well as over 55 pounds. So we're able to invite people in there, and that's what you're looking at.
Okay, that's great. And you mentioned, some of the places it's people and places, right? That at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And so I want to kind of transition into that. And I want to talk a little bit more first about the partnerships and then elaborate a little bit more about the range and what is around it and, the places that we're talking about, to be very specific. So let's start with relationships. So you mentioned the University of Alaska and
Mhm.
the UAS test site there and a collaboration you have. Can you explain a little bit how that works? In other words, they were one of the original 7. Now there's 9 test site FAA test sites. They have special authorities. I'll call it almost favored son or daughter status with the FAA in certain respects, in getting approvals. How do they connect with you guys and the operations you do out there at San Bernardino?
The greatest parallel would be to highlight the New Jersey test site in Cape May, New Jersey, the way they operate in conjunction with, um, the University of Alaska. And shout out to the guys on the Ultra True crew, since Dawn and I are part of that as well.
Yeah, that's
Um,
where we first met. And just sorry to interrupt you, Dave, but next week they're running that Shore to Soar event. I'm going to be out there live, doing a live stream, and I'm super excited to see my Jersey boys up close and personal again. But getting back to this, they're working with the University of Alaska as well.
Yes.
So tell us like that then, like how you guys are what your
So
relationship is like.
so we run it just like any other test site, except for the fact that we are acting in their capacity. And if someone wants to fly under that under a test site authorization, we're invoking it just like anybody else. I am the range manager, so I control that level of risk and start having conversations with people. And then as it starts relating with partnerships, what we started to do is pull other people in.
Yeah.
Um, from my perspective, again, everybody needs to be working together instead of being in silos. And this is the only way that you're going to be able to benefit, partnerships that allow schools, emergency services, manufacturers, research teams, even airport staff and personnel to learn and how we can all work together. And we're doing so by validating, by allowing people access to airspace and things like that. So it should be no surprise that another partnership that I pulled in is with the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yes.
Those that have seen me traveling around the country sometimes see me with a NIST shirt on.
Yep.
And it's because I'm so passionate about standardized test methods and the way that these systems can quantify and validate system capability that I married the two together here at this test range. And then we have other partners as well who are like public works companies and other types of organizations so that we're we're working together as a team and we're able to demonstrate and prove that this works. Then we invite in industry and we invite in other emergency services. We're saying, here's your playground, let's do it safely. What is it that you want to do? You want to validate a product? No problem. You want to do a training project? Not an issue. You want to do, let's do something research related? Let's coordinate that. And it's my job to manage that risk and work with everybody and the University of Alaska to make that possible.
Okay, great. And obviously, Kim, that's your background, right? Is forging partnerships and even internationally. Can you give us some insight? I think, and by the way, it's space all week, all the time this week for me. I'm deep into the space symposium here in Colorado Springs, and I believe you have an interesting collaboration with Kelly Space and Technologies that's right near. Tell us a little bit about that and maybe some of the other ones that you'd like to highlight besides the ones Dave just mentioned.
Oh my gosh, there are several. Kelly Space and Technology happens to be on site also here at the airport, and in fact is located on the other side of our parking lot. So we have a nice relationship with them. And it's simply another whole avenue for companies to come on site to use their wide range of capabilities in terms of testing, wow, virtually anything when it comes to components, anything aviation related. I could go on and on about that, but the bottom line is that we have a set of capabilities here on site that is really unmatched in my opinion.
Yeah, and Kelly Space, I don't know a lot about them, but I know they do some flight testing, vibration shock testing. I mean, there's so many companies here at the Space Symposium, as you can imagine, with spacecraft, the testing, the weird cleaning. Apparently every component on a spacecraft has to be sanitized greater than like surgical instruments in an operating room because you can't bring weird, earth dust into space, apparently. So lots of interesting things that Kelly Space does. So these partnerships that whether it's Kelly Space and Technologies or some of the others that you have forged over time, how do they tie back into your mission around infrastructure and UAS traffic management?
That's an awesome question, Dawn, and I think it's one of the missing pieces of the puzzle. If you think about the industry, there needs to be proper life cycles of products. And for a great example, Kelly Space actually did the validation of the fuel system for the Artemis space shuttle.
Oh,
If you
so
think of
cool.
each individual component that goes into a mobile robotic system,
Oh yeah.
in particular, anything that goes through DoD mill specifications, there
Yep.
needs to be a place or a partner who can take that drone manufacturer, that robotics manufacturer to the level they want to be in. And it literally is a matter of coming to the Norton test range and going across the parking lot. So it needs to happen to advance the industry to the position that we're in. Air mobility is not possible unless you validate your components. There are, if you're bringing an EOD robot and it needs to be hardened or tested and different things, same concept is true. The reason why we're not seeing it is because we're dealing with small, under 55-pound aircrafts that are not going to a level of airworthiness. But when
Yeah.
we start going to larger platforms,
Yep.
those components need to be looked at. Sand and dust, corrosive, shock testing, humidity, temperature, vibration. All these things we can simulate and create here at the Norton Range with Kelly Space as our partner.
Oh, that's awesome because you're absolutely right. We've got this, drone dominance.
I mean, we are a test range, so we're testing.
Good point. Haven't ever had OBS crash. We're good. Looks like we're reconnected now.
Don't see it.
Yep, you're here.
Okay, and we are back. It's live when the system crashes. So, anyway, that's part of what you guys do, right? Is make sure things don't crash, and you have Kelly and other things to do that. But let's talk about the places. So you talk about this parking lot. You can walk across to Kelly space and do some, component testing, if you will, stress testing on your actual hardware, maybe the software too, I imagine. What else? What else is around there? Because I alluded to it, an Air Force base is a city and things crop up around it. So I think we have a cool map maybe to show a little bit of the area. And I'd love for you guys to elaborate on why you feel that this, let's call it the entire ecosystem, not just what you've built on the base, but outside of the base, creates a really unique environment for people.
Okay. So the nice thing about working in support of an economic development agency, which would show, I guess what we're looking for would be a map of what's in the area, is we would see there's the airport and then there's the infrastructure that's built up around the airport.
There we go. Lots of little pretty color like symbols on here.
Yep, and it's such a small representation of what's actually here. But what it's meant to show is close proximity to hotels, restaurants, venues that can support certain initiatives. And because that infrastructure is around the airport and the test range, we're not operating in a sterile environment. We're operating in the real world conditions. Now, today should be, or maybe it was yesterday, was the deadline for the FCC response. And we heard Oregon DOT talk about, you shouldn't be testing in a lab. You should be testing in real world environments. And that's what we have around us, surrounding us in here. And that's what that picture represents. You need to get a part. That stuff is available. You need to get, a nice place to eat after a long day. That's very possible. You want to have a nice, comfortable bed, no problem. You need to get access to a different data set models or so that you can train your AI. It's here. If all the things that you need that you're looking for to not only, we'll just say, test, but to actually test efficiently, it is all in the place, and it's possible because the airport is drawing everything around it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to maybe get more granular with Kim on what's on the base too. So, we talked about the parking lot, what's across from it and everything like that. We saw the test range itself where people can fly, that quote unquote corridor Dave mentioned, or that area. But what physical facilities do you guys control or have access to that if I was a client and I was coming there, I could use a classroom or, there's, I don't know, an indoor flying area. I'm just making things up. I don't know. So you tell us.
Yeah, so we have, first of all, a 4,000 square foot headquarters here. The UAS Center is a space where companies can come and hold receptions if they want to do a demonstration of their product and they want to invite investors or customers. We are a great venue for anything like related to presentations or demos or anything like that. We can help with catering. We can help with all of those, audio visuals and all of those details as well. We certainly have on site at the airport indoor areas where drones can and are flown for demonstration purposes. And beyond that, we have a flight operations site, which is largely where we do our drone pilot training. And we have trained well over 400 drone pilots at this point. That's an outdoor area with a mobile trailer, which forms a classroom for the instructor. And then, of course, the test site itself, the test range itself, which is located also on site here at the airport, with one launch takeoff area here and the other, as Dave said, 10 miles to the east.
Okay.
There's also office space. So, for example, AI Bot completely relocated to the San Bernardino International Airport, and it's now their headquarters for manufacturing. And then briefly, I would say, Kim, we should also talk about the trade zone.
Yes. So San Bernardino International Airport is also part of the larger foreign trade zone here in Southern California. That enables companies to set up operations here and provide a way for them to not be charged not be paying import duties, not be paying export duties on products that are coming into the country until such time as they're ready to be sold.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And that kind of harkens back to your background working with the foreign companies at that airport. So that makes an abundant amount of sense. Okay, very good. So you mentioned AI Bot, Dave. They were on our show, gosh, I feel like 2, maybe 3 years ago, almost like it was January. It was like the first show of the year. And it was the first time anybody heard of them. Last year, commercial UAV, they had, I will say, like a resurgence because they kind of went quiet for a while. And then they had a bunch of drones, at Com UAV, and it was pretty cool. What other organizations are coming to the Norton Test Range today, and what are they using it for?
So obviously, as a range manager, I have to be careful about disclosure.
Yeah.
I can share that there's been over 18 companies passing through and expressing interest. One actually came from Australia this past weekend just to inquire about the area. We're getting a wide variety of interest in people asking for access. The one that actually came this weekend was more interestingly involved in the manned aviation side than the unmanned side. The only reason they wanted access to the range from an unmanned side was because it was more affordable and reasonable to do a certain level of testing. But what I loved about it more than anything else is we just now came full circle. We're not even real public again about what we're doing, but we attracted a partner who's touching the manned aviation world. And that's what it's all about. It's about us all working together, and we pulled them from the other end of the country.
Yeah, or the other end of the world, kind of, sort of.
Yep, the world, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, very cool. And not asking you to name names, but in terms of, that was a general aviation company. In terms of, like, let's just make it broad categories of people that have interest or that are looking to leverage the site. What types?
Okay.
You obviously have such a strong public safety background, training and things of this nature. What are the types of people, especially for those out there, not that this is like you have to be one of these, but the ones that have already either leveraged the site or are looking to do so?
We have universities that have reached out because they want to do a research scenario. We have entities that are working with the military that are trying to get more data to reach a different TRL status.
Yep.
We have manufacturers that are producing products that will work for not business jets, but commercial jets, like they're working with Delta Airlines.
Mhm.
We have manufacturers that are just trying to research or bring certain things to market under the 55-pound category. We have people flying aircraft over 500 pounds that are just trying to validate whether it's hovering and seeing how their system's transitioning. And we're getting a lot of interest as it relates to wildfire.
Oh, yeah. Sadly, we're coming up on that season again. And for the last several years, the world has literally been on fire. So that is unfortunately a growth opportunity in a way. The
Yeah.
wildfire stuff is not going away, but having new technologies to help combat it, contain it, prevent it is super critical right now to really everybody across the globe. So I love that you guys are involved in that. And California has been one of those places where we've seen it alight many times over the last couple of years, unfortunately.
Yeah, and
So
a few counter companies have reached out about putting sensors, and that's appropriate for what's happening in the world as well. But
yes.
wildfire seems to be a little bit more of a priority over that.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of different stakeholders coming to the table. Kim, back to you. How do you see some of these activities, whether it's research or validation activities? How do you see all the things that are happening at the center as supporting the broader UTM and infrastructure system over time?
I think one of the main things we can do as an economic development agency is to support the education of our local workforce. And we've largely done that through a very solid partnership with San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, which runs education programs not only for high school students, but more importantly, more even on a broader basis, young professionals. And so they've got a very extensive regional occupation program through which we contract to train hundreds of pilots, whether they're just finishing high school or whether they're well into their careers. So that partnership alone has been enough to really fuel a lot of the interest in autonomous and drone technology, and it's really been a positive for us.
Well, I love that. I know, Dave, you as a person have a great passion for workforce development, training that next generation, inspiring them, including little girls. I know in some circles that's not, the diversity is not a popular term anymore. But it takes all of us to move an industry forward, not just a portion of us. How do you
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is aviation influenced nonprofit that I co-founded. And in the past, it got started with Girls in Aviation Day events. Now it actually does larger scale events. Our next one's in Atlantic City, September 26th, but it's open to boys and girls now of all genders. Scholarships are given out and whatnot.
I love that. I love that. And here at the Space Symposium this week, they're talking quite a bit like it's not just the high school kids you need or even middle school. It's like you got to start even earlier than that to get these kids thinking about these careers, even just opening their eyes to it if they're not exposed. So I love, Kimberly, that you guys are plugged into the local educational community, and I'm sure there'll be much more of that over time as well. So really cool. All right. So looking ahead, what's next? And as always, time is flying here. What other, Dave, supporting infrastructure environments do you see as important as you guys look ahead to like the next phase of the Norton Test Range?
Well, I think what's important to understand about this range is that we're not in the middle of nowhere. And that's really important in the things that we're trying to establish here. So the future of UTM, of infrastructure, has to do with validation near airports, around developed areas, in places where there are real operational constraints. So what's around us is things that allow partners to move beyond ideas and into things that are meaningful. Aircraft payloads, operators, communication, different types of workflows, ways that we can do things. It's all present and laid out appropriately. Um, Exercising communication links, we're seeing testing autonomous behaviors in against standardized scenarios. I guess I guess what we're trying to just get across as passionately as possible is that the infrastructure is here, it's developed, and it's ready to support you.
No, that's great. And Kim, back to you. I mean, just thinking strategically, right? LA Olympics 2028, I believe at the very beginning of the show, you mentioned you guys are what, like an hour from LA, roughly?
Yeah, yeah, hour
So
drive.
I imagine if I was a company that wanted to plug into everything that's going to happen in LA, especially as the Olympics start heating up, if you will, and now it's probably starting to be surge time for those folks. To have a place like yours where you can have literally a landing pad,
That's right.
connections to the local community and beyond into that area would be invaluable. Do you see opportunities on the horizon in terms of LA and the Olympics? I know counter drone is something everybody's looking at, obviously. They're talking maybe some air taxi flights, eVTOLs. How do you see that, if at all, in terms of the future of the test range?
Oh, these are huge opportunities. Counter UAS for sure, advanced air mobility for sure. We're already pursuing opportunities, pursuing partnerships in those areas, and both domestically and internationally on behalf of the center here. Again, with it, I'm viewing it as a regional economic development play, but the reality is we have like you said, a real a place where companies can have a home base in Southern California, in an area where it matters, with all the amenities that we provide. So yes.
And maybe this one goes to you, Dave, as the manager. If I'm looking to plant my flag out there at San Bernardino, as someone serious that's listening, about infrastructure, UTM, autonomy, their drones, their air taxis, how do they get started?
The first step's the conversation, Don. It's we need to get away as an industry of, again, holding things close to the chest and trying to solve things with cookie cutter answers. Different groups come to us with different needs, whether it's an aircraft, a payload validation, something autonomy related, communications, proficiency. How do we see what someone's skill level is? Scenario testing, research, different types of mission planning. Our role is to help frame those needs practically. So the first thing, it all starts with the conversation. And then we define what's relevant, we build a plan, and then we give access to the airspace or access to the land, access to the classroom, access to the airport, perhaps stakeholder coordination, or best part, standardized test methods. It all starts with the conversation.
Okay, amazing. Great, great. So, Kim, over to you. What do you want potential partners to remember about what you're building there at San Bernardino?
We would like them to know that we've got a team here which is capable of supporting their needs at whatever stage of development their products or ideas are currently at. Whether you've got a software product, a drone itself, anything hardware or software related, or services even related to drone technology, let's start a conversation, as Dave said.
All right, very good. And to have that conversation, how do they, like, as a practical matter, how do they find you? So you guys have a website. We've got the QR code up here. How else, Dave?
So you can always send an email to me. It's dkrause at uascenter.sbd.com. uascentersbd.com, excuse me. Or just go to the website, uascentersbd.com. And there is a link right on the website to start an inquiry or try to get access to the range, which will filter between Kim and I and some of the other representatives here. And I would add in there that, not only is it drones, it's mobile robotics, it's sensor companies, anybody that has an interest in integrating with infrastructure that supports an an airport. I don't know what the phone number is here. I'm sure Kim can chime in on that. But yeah, the website is the greatest source to reach out to us. Or you can always find me on LinkedIn. That's an easy thing to do. Just track down influential drones as well.
Okay, great. Kim, did you want to elaborate on that? I don't know if you have the phone number.
No, it's okay. Phone number's on the website, so it's the best
Okay.
way to reach us.
No worries. And of course, people can possibly find you live running around events. I know, Kim, that's where we first met. Was it in the summer of last year at the AUVSI Drone and AAM Policy Symposium where Dave introduced us?
That's right.
Yeah, we had a great rooftop
That
park
was
up
great,
there across from the
Fun.
ballpark. So all about connections. Are there any upcoming events where one or both of you people might be able to see you, run into you, have an in-person conversation?
Well, this afternoon I'll be at Cal State San Bernardino, where they're having their first annual Defining the Future conference. It's a 2-day conference, connecting all of their robotics and drone technology related students with the industry at large. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very cool, very cool. Dave?
And I'll be, I was asked to support a company doing a workshop at AUVSI this year. So I'll be walking around for a day or two and anybody can reach me there. And additionally, I'm going to pop my head into the, to your session, Dawn, and say hello to you so people can find me at your Law Connect conference as well.
Awesome, awesome. And your Jersey partner in crime, Emily Hines, I believe, is coming as well. And what Dave's talking about, if you don't know, is our Law Tech Connect workshop. It's embedded in Exponential. It's our 5th anniversary year. If you have full or VIP conference pass, you can attend for free. If you don't, it is the cheapest way to get in and plus walk the expo hall floor. We will also be having a happy hour Wednesday night, separate registration. Everything is on the autonomyglobal.co website under the events tab. Check it out. And by the way, our buddy FireMech Tech Rob, he is a super fan. He's out there giving us the big thumbs up. Rob, great to see you out there, buddy. And we also had a little chime in earlier, which I failed to acknowledge, from Pete Flores Gomez. So thanks, Pete, for dialing in as well. Appreciate everybody. So we are at the home stretch here, and what I want to do is cede the floor to each of you for any concluding remarks before we dial off today. If there's anything that I missed, that I didn't cover, that you wanted to tell people about, now is your chance. So we'll start with you, Kim, and then we'll end with Dave.
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. A lot of times people are not quite aware that the airport is out here, that we're in Southern California, and we're ready to work with companies and agencies.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's great to know, because I think people do look around, and there's some that have, like some of the original test sites, people know about them just because of that status. But what you guys are doing is really unique. So Dave, over to you for your concluding remarks.
We want the industry to just work together. And it's a mission of Influential Drones. It's a mission of the UAS Center here at SBD. There is complete alignment in what needs to happen to bring the industry together. It's been pretty clear the value of mobile robotic technology, air, ground, and aquatic systems. We're seeing it in the war. We're seeing it today. And in order for us to have a dominant country in anything relative to autonomy, test ranges need to support those initiatives. So we're here to adapt to your needs in a safe way as one of the national industry members for aviation safety. Nothing supersedes aviation safety, but we can help you reach those plateaus that you need to do to help bring your product to market in a safe, reliable way. And that's what it's all about, is working together. As an industry, aviation is family, and we're here to support you.
I love that. Family. We are family, right? Sister Sledge, dating myself here. Dave's been a proponent of not only togetherness, but safety for a long time in the drone community. Speaking of which, FAA Drone Safety Day is coming up next Saturday, the 25th. Lots of activities. Check out their website. Dave has been very active in that. In fact, he and I did a little, almost like mini series a couple of years ago on drone safety. That was super fun. with Drone Life. So check that out. Thank you both so much for sharing your vision and how you're bringing it to life out there in San Bernardino, not just for the region, of course, but for the country and also globally. So thank you for what you do. Thank everybody out there for listening. Thanks Airspace Link for sponsoring this month on UTM and infrastructure. It's such a critically important topic. And in terms of what's next, guys, I will be in Jersey next week for Shore to Soar. So check that out. And then we zoom over to North Dakota next week, one of the original test sites, to talk about what they've been doing as we continue this great month dedicated to this important theme. So thank you again, everybody. That's all she wrote. We are out here.